Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Empowered Hormones podcast. I'm your host, Sheridan Decker, and today we're chatting about why you're so gassy and it stinks. Because this is a very, very common symptom in women, but it is one that we do not talk about that much. Episode 198, we're actually doing pretty well. We're very on track to hitting the 200, which is I'm really excited about because the podcast has been a labor of love for so many years. And to have that many episodes out there for women is actually pretty exciting. So, today's topic unpredictable gas, the kind with no pattern, no trigger you can identify, the kind that doesn't care if you eat the same meal and then you eat it again. You might get gas sometimes, you might not get gas the next time. Super frustrating. I see this really commonly with gas, but also with bloating, with constipation, loose stools. There is mm, there isn't always a very clear pattern. So you could say, for example, yesterday was a really great day. You had your chicken, your rice, your omelets, maybe a few little snacky foods, fruit, bit of yogurt, went to the gym, kind of ate your main sort of safe foods, didn't go any like crazy off plan, didn't eat out, didn't have pizza, burgers, whatever. You did everything right, yet you still woke up at 3 a.m. with the sore stomach, with the trapped gas, with the bloating. Okay. Then 2, 3 days later, you could eat that same meal and not have the same symptoms. And this is really, really common in women. And I don't think we realize how quote unquote normal this is, as in to have some good days and then some terrible days on completely the same diet. Sometimes, so prior to working with me, I see this in women who are eating what we call a really standard, clean, healthy diet. This then comes down to what I'm going to chat about today, like the fermentation levels, the root causes, all those kinds of things. But before I get into it, I really want to acknowledge how much this does impact your quality of life. Because what I classically see is women modifying their lives around their gut. They might leave the gym early. They, change the workouts they want to do. They might, skip a gym class one day because their stomach's in so much pain and bloated, constipated, they can't even fathom going to the gym. You might not be eating out with friends because you don't know what your body's going to do, or you don't want to go to friends' places, or, you might be skipping food some days because you're like, well, I'm just so full and uncomfortable. I can't even get enough food into my diet. Or very, very commonly, the mental load of IBS, which is something that's not really talked about. But I remember when I went through my 10-year gut health journey, I was obsessed with food because I was always running this like cycle of food through my brain as being like, what caused my symptoms today? Am I going to react to that? Like, how is that impacting my gut? Is that going to give me a bowel movement? Like, or is it going to give me loose stools? Is it going to give me pain? Is it going to, like, it's just nonstop. That rumination, what we get with terrible dating now, we get with our guts as well. So, this is where that food anxiety comes in because one, you know, I see this in a couple camps. I see it around with weight, like, have I moved enough to eat that food, for example? So, caloric balance going on in women's head. And then I see this with IBS as well. Like, can I eat out? Is that going to impact my gut? Can I have that food? What about the supplements? And then you start running it on the supplements. Like, was it the probiotic? Was it the prebiotic? What was it? And you do have this complete mental load that it's super draining, guys. Super, super draining. So let's talk about why nothing is working, because I need you to understand this before we get into the root causes of this gassiness. The standard approach to IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome, so basically a mix of constipation, loose stools, bloating, gas, etc. The standard approach is try low FODMAP. If that's not working, cut more foods. If that's not working, maybe it's stress. If that's not working, keep taking your laxatives, eat more fiber, move daily. Like, that is the protocol, but it's not actually a root cause protocol. It's a symptom management protocol. And even though that can be helpful, because obviously you want to get your symptoms down, regardless of whether you're looking for the root cause or not, it doesn't actually heal what's going on. It's not a long-term approach. And for example, here's what low FODMAP does. It reduces the fermentable substrates in your gut, meaning it reduces the fuel available for gas producing bacteria to feed on. So you feel better, sometimes significantly better. And then you reintroduce a food, or you have a stressful week, or you go on a holiday and you eat differently for 10 days, and the gas comes back, and it can come back worse than before because you haven't actually addressed why those bacteria were growing in the first place. You've just removed the food source. Same with probiotics. I talked about this last week in the podcast. I see this constantly. Women with significant gut overgrowth taking 50 billion CFU of lactobacillus every morning, wondering why they feel worse. Adding this kind of bacteria count to a crowded gut is not fixing the issue, it's just making it worse. And then we see the GP testing piece. So usually this is the one that gets the most frustration because you are actively seeking out help and you're not getting answers. Like you're just being told it's all fine, it's all normal, it's just IBS, keep doing your thing without actually coming up with like, here's a plan, this is what we're doing. I was talking about this with my best friend yesterday and it was like, girl, love us a plan. Like, tell me what we're doing, how we're doing it, for how long, and what amount, and whatever. And we're both very, I would say, task orientated. Like, I like to know what's happening. I like clarity. I like, like it makes me feel safe. It gives me a perspective as to how long am I doing this thing. And I pull that into clinic a lot with my clients because I spreadsheet stuff. I like mapping stuff. I like being able to jump in and see what phase are you on? How long have you been on those supplements? Are they working? Are they not? And I do the same. Like I just did my second microbiome retest. So I did one in November, one in February, and I'm in my second protocol because I had bacteria in my gut that were causing my acne. Killing them has healed my, got rid of the acne, and now I'm healing the scarring. But I also had to rebuild the gut bacteria. But I have a plan in place. I know what I'm taking. I know how long I'm taking it for. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm retesting. Being out there in no man's land or someone saying to me, and how many people I saw off my skin over the last couple of years and never fixed it because A, didn't look for the root cause, and B, didn't have a solid plan in place. So testing's not just looking, it's giving you clarity. So let's chat about the root causes of this gassiness because that's why you're here today. So the first one is methane-dominant SIBO. SIBO is your small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. This one is massively underdiagnosed, especially in active women. That's what I have had, probably will get again in the past at some point, because it is super common. But methane-dominant SIBO is a little bit different because the gas isn't actually being produced by the bacteria. It's produced by archaea, a completely different class of microorganism called methane brevis-smiggi. If you want the full name, that's what it is, but we just call it methane overgrowth, methane dominant SIBO, SIBO M in some cases, or actually it's IMO, intestinal methane overgrowth. Here's why it matters. Archaea produce methane gas, and methane gas slows motility dramatically. So if you've got organisms living in your small intestine where they shouldn't be, producing a gas that essentially puts the brake. So let me rephrase it again. So you've got organisms living in your small intestine where they shouldn't be, producing a gas that essentially puts the brakes on your entire digestive system. That's what gas does. It slows things down. Fermentation increases. Gas continues to build up. Bloating becomes your baseline. So these organisms are sitting in your small intestine producing gas regardless of what you eat. The pattern feels random. Safe days don't protect you because the gas isn't coming from your food. It's coming from what's living inside of you. So you can eat strictly and still get symptoms because one, you're not eradicating the overgrowth, but also you haven't actually treated it, and the gas and the archaea tend to be able to ferment a lot of things regardless. So you need to do a lactose breath test, look at hydrogen and methane, ideally over a 3-hour window. We'll chat about that in a minute though. Root cause 2, dysbiosis. So this is where your microbiome mapping becomes really important, and this is where we overlap it with the SIBO stuff. Your gut microbiome is supposed to be diverse, right? So you should have balance of species. These species should produce different things: short chain fatty acids, beneficial compounds, immune regulating signals. When that balance is disrupted through antibiotics, stress, undereating, processed foods, or what I'm going to chat about next week, a previous gut infection, you can end up with an overgrowth of gas producing species and a depletion of the species that keep things in check. The most common gas producing culprits I see: Klebsiella, Citrobacter, certain strains of E. coli, high levels of hydrogen sulfide producers. So these aren't some exotic random bacterial strains. I actually see them in, I want to say, 90% of the microbiome mapping that comes through. So the large intestine stool tests, because they live in a lot of people's guts in small amounts. The issue is when they start to dominate. And here's the thing about dysbiosis, which is making that gas feel so unpredictable, is that the gas isn't just responding to what you ate today, it's responding to that whole microbial environment. So when your stress level shifts, your training, your sleep, your hormonal cycle, you can eat the same meal and have a completely different response because that microbial landscape is shifting, okay? So food logging alone isn't going to give you the full picture. Like, you can come to me with your food journal and this is what I ate and your calorie in count and being like, why am I so gassy? And me not have the answers for you unless I've seen a microbiome test paired with that SIBO test. Like, you really ideally need both. And we just want to have a comprehensive picture of what species are present, what's overgrown, what's depleted, what diversity looks like, and then really, what are your keystone species doing? So it's really, really important to see the whole thing rather than hyper focus on one thing. For example, here's a classic one. Everyone hyper focuses on parasites. As soon as someone's got a gut issue, everyone thinks it's a parasite, and it's usually not. It's usually your methane-dominant SIBO, or oftenly, like from that list I read out, E. coli quite a bit, but Klebsiella and Citrobacter, nearly everyone, and then hydrogen sulfide producers in a large amount as well. And then root cause number 3 is impaired motility. So your migrating motor complex basically sweeps through your small intestines between meals, clears bacteria, moves debris, keeps things moving in the right system. So it's your self-cleaning, guys. When it is impaired, the bacteria accumulate, gas accumulates. This gives you bloating. And the reason I see this getting impaired is because it's so sensitive to stress, to undereating, and to overtraining. The 3 common things I see in a lot of my clients, okay? The undereating may be for various reasons. The overtraining or incorrect training load is really, really common. And then the stress factor is obviously really, really huge. The other thing that I can see impact the migrating motor complex is like barley belly. So if you've been overseas and you've had gastro or traveler's diarrhea or a parasite that you haven't actually identified, then what I call post-infectionate gut dysfunction is one of the most common and undiagnosed drivers of chronic IBS. So what happens is, during an acute infection, your body produces antibodies to fight the pathogen, but some of these antibodies cross-react with this protein called, I'm going to say it wrong, vinculin, which is critical to migrating motor complex function, so MMC function. The immune system tries to protect you. In trying to do this, it can accidentally damage the very mechanism that keeps that small intestine clean and moving through. So even if you recover from the infection and you feel better, your motility can be compromised because the immune system has attacked that, essentially. 6 months later, 2 years later, you're dealing with the gas, the bloating, the SIBO, but it's actually a past infection is its root cause. So just to recap that, during an acute infection, so say you got barley belly, body produces antibodies to fight the pathogens, but these can cross-react with the protein that is critical to MMC function. So it's really important to have a look at your whole case history when you're understanding this stuff. So now that you know the root causes, then the big thing that we're unpacking is so the methane-dominant SIBO, the dysbiosis, the impaired motility. You're now going, well, Sharon, what do I do? Guys, you need a test. That's the bottom line. You need to test properly. So the two tests I would use for this gassiness that you're complaining about that's impacting the quality of your life, especially without a clear food pattern, is the SIBO breath test and the cobiome microbiome mapping. So the SIBO breath test is a lactulose breath test. It measures hydrogen and methane gas at regular intervals over 3 hours. Tells us whether there's an overgrowth in the small intestine, what type of gas is being produced, and how significant is that overgrowth. This is not the same as like you can get a standard hydrogen breath test. You do need the lactulose because you do need both gases measured. Then microbiome mapping, I like Nutripath GI360 or the cobiome microbiome mapping. Anything that's going to give you a comprehensive stool analysis to map out your microbiome at a level of detail that your GP just does not reach, okay? Microbiome diversity, keystone species, overgrowth, depletions, short chain fatty acid, inflammatory markers, secretory IgA. So all of these things are really, really important. And then obviously digestion efficiency markers. How well you're digesting your food. I need a clear picture of exactly what's happening in your large intestine and then tell us, is what's working, what's not working, what's happening in your gut before we put a protocol together. So these two tests are going to give us that whole picture. I can then create a protocol that's actually going to target, your particular microbiome without just guessing as to why you're gassy. So to wrap it up, unpredictable gas, not a mystery. Feels like a mystery, not a mystery. There is a reason for it. You don't need to keep eliminating food. You don't need to, keep changing your life, guys. You don't need to keep hiding away because of this horrible gassiness you've got going on. You just need to run the two tests. If you need clarity around how to get these tests, how to treat the results, book a gut health planning session with me. The link is in the show notes because you need to look at your full health history and see, hey, is there other factors going on as well? Like, is hormones playing a role? Is stress playing a role? Has my diet played a role in the past? Very, very important. Look at the root cause. Test, don't guess, guys. So if this episode hits home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. It's one of the most under talked about things in women. Constipation, bloating, we're talking about more and more. The gassiness, the smelliness of gas because of the way it impacts us. It's embarrassing. It's not nice to be around. We tend not to tell people about it. So if it hits home, share it with someone. And if you ever want to get some one-on-one help, jump on Zoom for a quick call and we can just brainstorm how to overcome your bloating and how to heal your gut.